Hey, welcome into the Stinkin Truth Podcast. Your host, Mark Schlereth, alongside my co-host, Mike Evans. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. We truly appreciate you. Please continue to share and subscribe. Thank you so much. Continue to grow every week, each and every week. So we thank you for that. Mike, how are you, buddy?
Doing great. Free agency off to a fast start as we knew it would be. Dive right into it. We got a lot of ground to cover. Although, before we get into free agency and guys on the move, did it surprise you or did it stand out to you how many players chose to re-sign with their own teams right before the start of free agency? I can't recall this many.
Yeah, I thought
in years past.
I thought the NFL was drunk. I mean, they're just signing guys right and left. The amount of money is unbelievable. But to your point, I think one of the things that we have seen is that you covet other people's players. And when you get other people's players, you realize, maybe they're not quite what we thought they were. And so there's an old saying that I love: the grass is not greener on the other side of the fence. The grass is greener where you water it. So continue to water the players that you have, continue to develop those guys, continue to pour into those guys. So I think it's twofold. I think the teams are starting to realize, you know what? It's not greener on the other side. We've got pretty good players. Let's go ahead and take care of these players. Let's go ahead and give them market value. That's the other thing. As the cap continues to rise because of the TV deals, let's go ahead and just say, hey, bam, we're going to make this deal before you hit free agency. We're going to give you market value right off the bat. We're going to give you something you're really happy with. You don't have to leave. You don't have to move your family. You don't have to change school districts, whatever the case may be. You can hunker down right here. We've got it pretty good. And you saw a lot of that entering free agency, a lot of those deals getting done before the free agent market actually opened up.
So you've said this before, that when it comes to free agency, especially at the early stages of free agency, you're paying A+ money for B+ players. So it's not necessarily something you want to be proud of to say you're winning free agency. But are there a couple teams that stand out for you that did a nice job in the early stages, that first wave of free agency?
Yeah, I think what the Chicago Bears did, Mike, and, I understand the Caleb Williams thing and generational talent and all that garbage we had to hear about, right? And then what he takes, 62, 68 sacks, something like that. A lot of them his fault, some of them coaching, a lot of it on the offensive line as well. And, I always say, hey, you got to build your team from the inside out. And I believe in that. And Ryan Poles, their general manager, also said that. And then what did he do? Loaded up on weapons. And, the next time that signing a wide receiver puts you over the top, it'll be the first time that signing a wide receiver ever puts you over the top. Like, signing a wide receiver and think that's going to carry you to the Super Bowl is stupid. It's ridiculous. So the Chicago Bears kind of assessed what they did in year one with Caleb Williams. They changed their coaching staff. They went out and got Ben Johnson. And I talked to Ben Johnson multiple times here in the offseason. Like, Ben Johnson is a believer in you got to have an offensive line. You got to have a run game. Go look at Ben Johnson by the numbers. Watch how many times they ran the ball on second and long and third and long. Now, part of that is because they know on fourth down we're going for it under Dan Campbell. But Ben Johnson understands the value of running the ball, understands the value of having a great group up front. So what do? They went out, they traded for Joe Thuney out of Kansas City, who was an outstanding guard who ended up getting forced into emergency duty at the tackle position. They went out and got Jonah Jackson, who has been really, he was good in Detroit, but he got hurt a lot, good in LA, but he got hurt there too. So that's a little bit of a gamble, but they're trying to make sure, because when he's playing, I thought he was one of the better guards in football. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy all that much. And then they went out and got Drew Dahlman, who is one of the best centers in football that nobody talks about. And part of that is because you're sandwiched between two really good guards. Chris Lindstrom's an all-pro, plays right guard for the Atlanta Falcons. Then they had a kid, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, that was, I think, drafted out of Stanford, that plays left guard, who really, even in his rookie year, I'm the official commentator for Fox of the NFC West. So I did a lot of Atlanta games a year ago. really, really impressive players. So I think they looked at it like, hey, we got 2 really good players on the outside. We can sandwich a young center in there, and we can figure it out. So I love the Drew Dahlman signing. They also got Grady Jarrett from Atlanta to pair inside a Sweat. Made another couple of moves, but they really enforced. They got 2 defensive linemen, 3 offensive linemen, either through trades or free agency. So they really solidified their O-line. They solidified their front 7 on defense, and that's going to take a lot of pressure off of Caleb Williams for him to kind of grow and for you to get a real natural, actual assessment of what Caleb Williams is.
Another team that was a flurry of moves. Boy, it used to be we always would talk about the Patriots in a podcast like this. They've been out of sight, out of mind for the last couple of years, but they were very active as well, including getting a guy that I know you had right near the top of your free agent list in Milton Williams.
Yeah, Milton Williams. I did a lot of film study on Milton Williams, and I mean, he was a wrecking crew. One, just plays with unbelievable leverage and get off. And, one of the things I used to study, like I used to ask our film guys when I played in Denver, give me sideline copy. And sideline, the all-22, nobody, offensive and defensive linemen don't study that really. And I always wanted some sideline copy just to really – a couple of things. I wanted to see levels. So in pass rushing situations, I say, hey, give me the cut-ups of sideline for pass rushing, 3rd down and 7, 2nd down and 7. Why? Because when you run stunts in games, you'll see guys line up on a little different level. Right. On 1st down, on 2nd down, like 2nd down, like anything that's 1st and 10. So I kind of always look at base downs as 1st and 10 and 2nd and 5 minus, right? Those you're going to get base down information. So you're going to get, your typical 2 back formations, your 2 tight end formations. You're going to get more run heavy formations. So you get a lot of guys playing you solid, maybe 3 linebackers or, they just play you differently. When you get into nickel situations, I wanted to see what the levels were that defensive linemen lined up in. So you could always tell, hey, if they're running a end tackle game where the end pinches hard and the tackle loops around, you'll see the end closer to the ball and the tackle off the ball a little bit, right? Or you'll see if we're running tackle end game, you'll see the tackle as the penetrator lined up a little tighter to the ball and the defensive end off, so they can make a quicker exchange. Okay. So you'll see some of those things. The other thing you see from sideline copy is first off the ball. The guy, and I always say this, the guy who jumps off the ball first, the guy who's, is way quicker than everybody else when the ball's snapped is always your best player. And when I watched Milton Williams play, dude was first off the ball, just wham, with leverage into guys, had good pass rush moves from the inside. I just thought he was a guy, and I told you this, that I would have liked the Denver Broncos to go after. Yep. Now, he ended up signing a $100 million contract, and he was one of the most coveted free agents. And, I think when we did this on our radio show, I think I surprised you and Stokely because – you're like, hey, he's a backup in Philly. Right, and I'm like, no, this guy can flat play. So it just interesting. But the New England Patriots did the most New England stuff you could ever do. Like they got a bunch of also-rans playing receiver. And this is Mike Vrabel. Everything he did was address, the front 7 on defense. He addressed the offensive line. And like, that's what he did. Like, it's like we may not play with a quarterback. We may just may come out there and just try to bludgeon you to death in New England. But I actually like the moves the New England Patriots made. I think it was prototypical of who Mike Vrabel is and the way he played football when he was a player and what he did in Tennessee to have success as well.
Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Geno Smith out in Seattle, Sam Darnold in. Is that a good trade out for the Seahawks?
Well, I think it's a fair kind of value for value assessment. The Geno Smith wanted to get paid, and Seattle wasn't going to pay him. And Sam Darnold looked at that like that Baker Mayfield contract, 3 years, $110 million, $55 million total guaranteed. He looked at that as a great opportunity. But now you look at Sam Darnold, and he played great. Like great for about 16 games, right? Week 17 and the playoff week, he was not very good. And what's interesting to me, a couple things, twofold. One is he's going from a situation where he was throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, all the sins. Like every sin there is, that they have all of them. Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, they had Jones, they had a good offensive line. So from a talent perspective, you had one of the most talented teams in football. And you're going to Seattle. They got rid of DK Metcalf, got rid of Tyler Lockett. You know, their number one receiver is Smith and Jigba and Jake Bobo. Although I like Jake Bobo, big gangly white guy, not necessarily the same level of talent that they had in Minnesota. They have not been able to figure out their offensive line. If you look at Geno Smith's sack numbers, Geno Smith instant pressure numbers, like there was nobody that faced more quick pressures than Geno Smith did. And I think one of the things that's interesting because of those things, I think Geno Smith is sneaky good, and Seattle didn't really respect how good Geno Smith is. So is it maybe a step back at the quarterback? Maybe a little bit. I think Geno Smith is a lot better than people give him credit for. And I know Pete Carroll, because I've talked to Pete Carroll one-on-one about Geno Smith, his ability to spin it, how smart he is. Like this guy, his career resurgence is like almost Rich Gannon-like.
So you're looking at a guy like, so, all right, because I think initially people looked at Geno Smith being reunited with Pete Carroll, and it was more like, hey, Pete's just looking for a comfort level, just somebody he's comfortable with as he makes the transition to the Raiders. But you're saying, no. This is his endorsement of Geno Smith, the player, and the idea that the Raiders with Geno Smith can walk right into that AFC West with Herbert, Mahomes, Bo Nix, and be able to compete just fine.
Well, you think about where Pete Carroll and what Pete Carroll has done over the course of his career. He's always been able to find defensive backs. He's always been able to find defensive talent. So you're going to build a defense and you're going to run the ball. Those are things that Pete Carroll definitely believes in, right? I want to run the ball. And one of the things that Pete told me, and he's told me this multiple times, is, hey, listen, like we win in Seattle. And he put the whole chart up. Like he was like, we win more one-score games late than any team in football. Why? That's how we play football, right? We play great defense, stellar defense. We turn the ball over and we run the ball. We control the clock. We wear teams out. We get that last drive. And, Russell Wilson played some schoolyard stuff in that last drive, but they were able to make plays. Like I expect the Raiders to play that style of football under Pete Carroll. The other thing that concerns me, two concerns. One is in Seattle. And I think Seattle is going to be better than people think. But still, what this is telling you, if you're a Seattle fan, Mike Macdonald, their head coach, is saying, hey, I can build the defense. I can have the Ravens model. We're going to be stellar. We're going to run the ball. We're going to take we're going to take some of the onus off the quarterback. But the thing that concerns me about that and the concern for the Minnesota Vikings, okay, two concerns. One, when you're run by a defensive-minded head coach, everything you do, usually as a play caller, usually as a game manager, as the head coach, goes to supporting your defense. Right? It's all about making your defense look good, taking the onus off your defense. When you're an offensive head coach, it's all about putting up offensive numbers. So sometimes the development of your quarterback takes a back seat to protecting your defense. And your decisions are saying, hey, like in Detroit, hey, man, it's a 4th down and 4 from your 40. Hell yeah, we're going for it, right? Whereas a defensive coach, you're like, no, let's punt it, pin them back deep and protect my defense. And so those are the things that you think about. So that could impede the progress of Sam Darnold. The other concern I would have is on the Minnesota Vikings standpoint.
Yeah.
Do you have that much hubris Is there hubris in your decision? You went 14-3. You were one game away from winning the NFC championship, right? From being the home field advantage and having the best record in the NFC. And you have so much hubris that you feel like, hey, we did it with Kirk Cousins. We did it with Sam Darnold. I can do it with anybody. That scares me a little bit because I don't know what JJ McCarthy is. Nobody does. I liked him coming out of the draft, but he didn't have a lot of reps. Now he's coming off this knee injury that he chose to have the season-ending surgery when initially, if you remember, it was like, hey, it's going to be, 2 to 4 weeks. And then they went in and said, no, he chose or he elected to have the cartilage repaired as opposed to having the cartilage snipped out. And then he had another, I believe, surgery in November because it was still swelling to go, a debridement type of thing to clean it up or whatever it was. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But, I know there were reports of him having another surgery. Like, do you have is there so much hubris that you can say, hey, listen, we almost won the NFC. We almost had home field advantage throughout the playoffs, but we're so damn good that, what Sam Darnold did was really of not much consequence. So we're going to move on from him.
Yeah, but in fairness to the Vikings, the moment you drafted J.J. McCarthy, you knew this day was coming sooner rather than later.
Correct. But drafting a quarterback in the first round does not hamstring your franchise. So, hey, JJ, you're going to sit another year. We're going to franchise Sam and run it back. And let's see if Sam can be who he is. Or we're going to give him a 3-year, $100 million deal, but really we can get out after a year, or 2 years, whatever. I mean, there's ways. The money when NFL contracts is fungible, right? I mean, it'll cost you, but the cap keeps going up 9% every year or whatever it goes up. So, I mean, sitting him very much like Aaron Rodgers had to sit for Brett Favre, like that's not the worst thing in the world to happen. I worry about you thinking we got so much talent and I'm such a great play caller. And we've got such a great offense that we really don't and maybe it'll work out. It probably will because I do have a lot of respect for Kevin O'Connell. I do have a lot of respect for that offense. Justin Jefferson's one of the greats that's ever played in this league. I love Addison. I love Hawkinson. Those guys can really play. I love that they brought Aaron Jones back and they upgraded on their offensive line. They went out and got, I think, the center from Indianapolis, Kelly. So I think all of those things are really good moves. But again, you were a game away. Like, I'll ask you this. If they would have won week 18 or would have won a playoff game, is Sam Darnold still the quarterback there?
Yes.
100%, right? Mm-hmm. So one game, 16 great games, one bad one, you're like, nah, let's move on. It just is, I get it, but it still is a little bit fishy, Mike.
You mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Steelers? Is this, if he plays, is this the only place that at this point he's likely to end up?
Yeah, I would think like sitting down one-on-one with Aaron Rodgers, he said it's got to be a really near perfect situation for me to play again. Otherwise, I'll retire. So the Giants seems like retirement. If you go, okay, I could play either the Giants or nowhere, I'll take retirement. I'll take nowhere. This one feels like the perfect spot. Now, there are reports out there that the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers have had conversations. Russell Wilson is also a free agent. But it feels to me right now that if it was Russ, right, wouldn't they have already gotten him signed if they wanted Russ? Like, Russ feels like, to me, a stopgap at best quarterback, meaning, hey, we're only going to sign Russ. We know we're going to draft a quarterback, and he's going to be our bridge guy for 4 to 6 weeks until that quarterback is ready. Because there's too many things we've talked about. Like, we talked about the fact that he doesn't throw the ball in the middle of the football field, and the only pocket that Russ likes to stay in is the pocket of the owners. That's it. Like, he is getting out of every other pocket, just staying in the pocket of the owners. So I would say that, there's nobody that really looks like they have a ton of interest in Russ being their quarterback. So he's a stopgap bridge quarterback at best at this point. So to me, Aaron Rodgers, he signs in Pittsburgh unless Minnesota comes calling. That would be my one caveat.
Right.
If Minnesota picked up the phone and said, hey, Aaron, what do you think about playing a season in Minnesota with the weapons that we have? Now, the only fallback was, okay, let me see. You played in Green Bay, and then you went to the Jets like Brett Favre, and then you went to Minnesota like Brett Favre.
Too soon?
Yeah, like those two. I don't know if that would go over well for Aaron, but I do feel like it's almost at this point in his career, it feels to me like it's Pittsburgh or bust.
Justin Fields to the Jets. Did that one kind of catch you off guard? 2-year, $40 million deal. I assume that he's going to the Jets with the understanding that he is the starter and not just being brought there to be a bridge, keep the seat warm until, I don't know, Shedeur Sanders is ready to go.
Yeah, all the other bridge guys, Mike, okay, Baker Mayfield, what did he sign for his first year in Tampa? Like $5-10 million bucks. Sam Darnold, $5 to $10 million bucks in Minnesota. All of a sudden, it's a 2-year, $40 million deal with $30 million fully guaranteed for Justin Fields. Like, I thought personally that they would keep him in Pittsburgh. He'd be the backup to Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, possibly when Kirk Cousins gets released. That's kind of how I felt like it was going to go down. But this is shocking. Although I will say that Justin Fields seems to be the best quarterback the Jets have signed since Joe Willie Namath. So it's been a while now, but like it's shocking to me. And having done a bunch of his games when he was a starter in Chicago, I remember sitting with Dan Campbell and goes, dude keeps me up at night because it's the off-schedule stuff that scares you and the off-schedule stuff that can beat you on occasion if you're not completely disciplined on your edge with the quarterback run game. That's where he kills you. That's where he gets you. Like every coordinator I've ever talked to that was facing Justin Fields said the same thing. Got to keep him in the pocket. Can't let him escape the pocket. Make him beat you throwing the football. And I described him in a game I called, Mike. I said he's a lot like my golf game. He sprays it all over the place, right? It's like, oh, my God, it's like he's never played before. Are you sure you're right-handed? And then all of a sudden he makes the throw. It's like me piping him 325 off the tee box, right down the middle going, man, I'm good. I can really golf. And he's like this. It's like one or two drives a game, one or two throws a game that has you going, if only we can harness that, we can just figure that out. And so that is to me, that's Justin Fields. Now, he is absolutely 99 percentile when it comes to athleticism, his ability to do things out of the pocket, the quarterback run game with the quarterback counter, the RPO game, all that stuff. But is he or will he ever truly develop as a straight drop back passer? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it. He's year 5?
Yeah. So
it doesn't feel like it. But the cool thing about Justin sitting down and talking to him is he'll tell you the same thing. He'll be like, no, I got to be better at that. That's what I'm always working on that. I'm not good enough at that yet. So that's something I've got to keep on, working on and grinding on. And I'll tell you the other thing about Justin Fields. Guys love playing with him. They love him. Like he is, like if you look at the difference between, I always say there's two types of people. Those who energize the room when they walk in it and those who energize the room when they walk out. That whole organization got energized when Aaron Rodgers, walked out because, he all of a sudden that they could breathe again. They will be energized when Justin Fields walks into that building because he's just one of those guys that people seem to gravitate to, that people seem to love.
We talked about some of those teams that seem to get a boost from free agency. That sound, is that the 49ers window closing, slamming shut? Boy, they lost a ton.
They did, and yet I'm not concerned.
Really?
Yeah. So I love Talanoa Hufanga, but he's been injured the last 2 years, right? In 2022, he was all pro. The dude was all over the place. He has been mentored since he was a kid by Troy Polamalu. Like the kid can play, and he plays with unbelievable passion, effort, speed, understanding the game. I mean, this kid this kid, like the first guy that he got connected with in San Francisco was Fred Warner. And like went and seeked him out and said, hey man, I'm here. Help me be a great player. So that's the kind of kid he is, right? Like he's really diligent about getting better and about working and about, picking everybody's brain. He's just got he's an unbelievable young man. He's so much fun to talk to, so much fun to watch play. So he tears his ACL in 2023. Then he comes back. He misses the first several games because he's still on PUP. He comes back, he plays. Then he tears some ligaments in his wrist, and he's out again last year. And he ends up playing the last 5 games or so for San Francisco. Meanwhile, they had a couple of young guys. So they let go of Travarius Ward. They let go of Talanoa Funga. They let go of Dre Greenlaw. Yep. Well, they had a couple of young kids that really played. This kid named Green played really well at the cornerback position, as did Diamador Lenore. He played really well at the cornerback position. They had a kid named Mustafa who played exceptionally well at the safety position. He was flying around. And then they went out and got Robert Saleh to come back. Now, the last 2 years, they've had Steve Wilkinson call plays. He's been the defense coordinator. And last year it was a guy by the name of Sorensen. And they got rid of both of those guys. In comes Robert Saleh, who is, his mantra is all gas, no brakes, and keep it simple, stupid. Like they will play a couple of things. They'll play them exceptionally well, and they will fly around and make plays. So I'm not as concerned as most people are with the change on the defensive side. There's a reason those guys were let go is because they were hurt. And because when they got hurt, young guys stepped up and San Francisco was like, oh, these young kids can play. And now we've got some salary certainty. We don't have to spend a bunch of money on veterans, and the young guys we think can play.
Well, okay. Well, that may be the silver lining for the 49ers. What would be your message to Bronco fans who just went out and signed both Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw with their recent injury history?
They're great. They're when healthy. They're both difference makers, huge difference makers. But again, when healthy. Greenlaw has got attitude. Greenlaw plays like beyond the echo of the whistle. He's trying. He legitimately there's not a whole lot of intimidation, but there are several players that you're like, oof, that guy is that guy is going to get you. Yeah. Like Greenlaw is that guy, sideline to sideline, and one of those guys that can take away multiple things. So one of the ways, I was studying linebackers coming into this free agency period, and I studied Zach Bond.
Yep. And
Zach Bond's ability to kind of read through route combinations on his drops. So having the spatial awareness, to be dropping, and normally if you're a hook dropper, say for instance, you're at let's say 8 to 10 yards, 2 yards outside the hash, right? So that's the point you're trying to get to. So you'll see him feel a route that's maybe a basic or something just outside of him. He'll run through it, take away that initial read of the quarterback, and instead of just getting 8 to 10, he might get 12 to 14. And so as soon as he takes that away and he sees the quarterback check off, now he's getting to his point. And then the quarterback's going to go, okay, now I got to get to the flat or whatever, or now I got to get to the curl. And he runs through the curl to the flat. He takes away two reads, and then he's tackling the flat for a 3-yard gain. And you're like, son of a bitch, we're behind the chains now, right? And he does that really, it's really good stuff when you watch it on film. You're like, that guy has awareness. I look at Greenlaw as a guy that can drop, can take some of those things away, very much like Fred Warner does, still trigger. So he makes you throw the underneath route, and then even from 12 or 14 yards can put his foot in the ground and tackle you for a 3-yard gain. Mm-hmm. And you're like, every time you're like, son of a gun, we thought we're going to run the shallow cross, and we thought we're going to dump it off at 3 or 4 yards, and we thought we'd get we'd be in 2nd down and 8, and instead we're in 2nd down and 7 because he tackled it. He read it and tackled it. So those are some of the things that he does. And Hufanga is one of those guys that could be a middle of the field eraser as far as interceptions and things of that nature are concerned. But I think the big thing that, the Broncos really wanted him for was his ability to sit in that 2-shell look. Both those safeties in 2-shell are run defenders in the alleys. So when you get a read, so if you're on the tight end side and you get a read where that tight end is blocking down or whatever, dude, you got to trigger and you got to be at the line of scrimmage before the back gets there. And he's one of those guys from a tackling standpoint that can read that stuff and be at the line of scrimmage before the back, makes his first cut. So, and he's not afraid to tackle you, man. He'll hit you in the mouth too, just like Greenlaw. So I think that's why those guys were so coveted by the Broncos.
All right. Well, a great start to a free agency. We still have the second wave, third wave. By the time we talk on Thursday again, it'll pretty much be exhausted, but a lot of good value, a lot of good players out there to be had if you handle free agency the right way.
Yeah, no question about it. We'll kind of go through the rest of free agency, kind of winners and losers maybe next time and kind of figure all that stuff out. But anyhow, always good to be with you, buddy. Always good to talk a little football here on the Stinkin Truth Podcast. We appreciate all of you for listening. Please subscribe. For Mike and Mark, we'll talk to you guys later on in the week.